You ever just stop and look at a huge building, a skyscraper, a school, even your own home, and think, how in the world did they build that? Well, today we're going on that exact journey. We're going to follow the entire incredible process from a simple idea all the way to the finished building. All right, let's break this down. Here's our roadmap. We'll start with the blueprint, the what and the where. Then we'll get into surveying the land, which is way cooler than it sounds. After that, it's time to build, starting with the foundation and walls. And finally, we'll put the roof on, so to speak, with the structure and the finish. No matter how wild or complicated a building looks, it all boils down to two really simple questions to start. First, what are we building? And second, where are we going to put it? These two decisions right here, they set the stage for everything else. So first up is the what. And a building's purpose? That's everything. It's its whole identity, and it totally dictates the design. I mean, you're not going to build a family home the same way you build a giant factory, right? The needs are completely different, whether it's a house, a hospital, or a theater.
Okay, so you've got the what figured out. Now for the where. And let me tell you, this is way more than just pointing to a pretty spot on the map. Choosing the right location is a super calculated decision, and it's based on a whole checklist of critical stuff. Yeah, there's a whole checklist that engineers and architects have to go through. It's serious stuff. Does the site actually make sense for the building? Is there easy access to water, to electricity? Is the ground level enough so you don't get flooded? And maybe the most important question of all, can the soil actually hold up the massive weight of the building? And of course, you got to do all this while following local laws. Okay, the site is chosen. Now comes the really precise part, mapping every single inch of it. This is where surveying comes in. And this is a field that has gone from really tough manual work to, well, kind of sci-fi, using satellites and lasers. Just look at this. This perfectly shows the massive leap in technology we've made. On the one side, you've got the old school surveyor's chain, a literal chain of metal links they use to measure things out. And on the other, a modern total station, this laser blasting device that measures things with insane accuracy. Can you imagine? Back in the day, if you had to measure a long distance, surveyors had to physically walk the entire line, using these things called ranging rods to make sure they were going straight. Think about doing that through a dense forest or up a steep hill. It was slow, back-breaking work. Fast forward to today, and it's a completely different world. A total station can bounce a laser off a target and get a measurement that's accurate down to the millimeter. GPS, it uses satellites to tell you exactly where you are on Earth. And then there's remote sensing, which uses things like drones to gather data from the sky, which just changes the game entirely. And this is where it gets really cool. Remote sensing gives us this incredible bird's-eye view. By flying over an area with special cameras, you can create these unbelievably detailed maps. It's faster, it's way more accurate, and you can do it without ever having to chop down a single tree. All right, the land is mapped, every point is plotted. Now the real fun begins, the actual construction. And it all starts from the ground up, with the single most important part of any building, the foundation. But think about it for a second. A building is mind-bogglingly heavy. All that concrete and steel. So how do you stop it from just sinking into the ground? How do you transfer all that weight safely into the earth? Well, the answer is the foundation. And it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. For instance, you might use what's called a combined footing, like you see here. It creates a shared base for a couple of columns, which spreads their weight out over a much bigger area. But what happens if you're building on really weak, mushy soil? That's when engineers pull out something called a raft foundation. Just think of it like one giant concrete slab that the entire building sits on. It basically lets the whole structure float on top of the weak ground without sinking or tipping over. Foundation is solid. We're anchored to the earth. Time to go up. And that means we're talking about masonry. This is the ancient art of stacking things like stone or brick and sticking them together with mortar to make walls. And when it comes to materials, it's all about trade-offs. You've got stone versus brick. Stone is super strong and keeps water out, but it's also really heavy and a pain to work with. Bricks, on the other hand, are lighter, way easier to handle, and they're great against fire. It really just depends on what the building needs. But here's something you might not think about. It's not just what you use, it's how you stack it. The pattern, which is called a bond, is super important for how strong a wall is. This is the most basic one, a stretcher bond. All the bricks are just laid long ways. Simple, and it works great for internal walls that aren't holding up a ton of weight. Now for the really heavy-duty walls, you need something stronger. Enter the English bond. Here, you alternate a row of long bricks with a row of short bricks. This interlocking pattern makes the wall incredibly strong and fantastic at spreading out all the weight from above.
Okay, the walls are up. It's actually starting to look like a building now. So what's next? Well, we need to add the internal skeleton, the parts that hold up the floors and the roof, and then put on the final skin to turn it into a place you can actually use.
Let's talk about beams. These things are the unsung heroes, the workhorses of the whole structure. They're these horizontal supports that stretch across open spaces, and their whole job is to take all the weight from the floors and the roof and channel it safely down into the columns.
So what are those beams holding up? Slabs. These flat concrete surfaces, usually with steel inside for strength, are literally the floors you're walking on and the ceiling over your head. They're what turn a skeleton into a multi-level building.
But we're not done yet. All those brick walls, they're still rough, uneven, not exactly move-in ready. To protect them and get them ready for paint, they need a final coating, and that's where plastering comes in.
And this is a real craft. It's not just smearing some stuff on the wall. It's a careful, multi-layer process. You start by prepping the surface. Then you put on a rough base coat so the other layers can stick. Then comes a second, smoother coat for strength. And finally, you apply a super thin finish coat and polish it until it's perfectly smooth. So there you have it. From a simple idea on a blueprint to a solid structure we can live and work in. It's an amazing story of science, skill, and a whole lot of hard work. The next time you walk into any building, maybe you'll see it a little differently. You'll see the unseen story. So, what should we dig into next?